From the Australian Security Academy with episode 162 of Spy Curious, the Friday afternoon program for 30 minutes for factual and surveillance investigators who are licensed in each state and territory in Australia. And oh boy, do we have fun in our careers. Today we're going to cover the top 10 cliches in investigations, the outcome of the coroner's finding for the man who was killed by his tape measure, and also we're going to be having a look at some great job vacancies around the country today. So we've got a lot to get through. We're in episode, wait for it, here it comes, 162 of Spy Curious. That's 162 Fridays in a row of weekly news for licensed private, government and corporate investigators. 2019, Greg Robbo Roberts was the site supervisor at a building construction in Victoria, and he was working on some scaffolding at the top of the building. Fellow workers were down below him. It was a windy, gusty day, and it was a reconstruction from a demolished building. At about 3:30 in the afternoon, his fellow workers heard a loud flash and turned around and saw that he'd been knocked over. He fell 3 metres. The coroner's report said that his tape measure that he was using to measure whatever it was he was measuring had touched 22,000 volt high voltage lines above him. This is a really common type of accident. It happens with metal guttering for houses and plumbers. You'll do investigations like this for farmers moving irrigation and touching overhead power lines. Construction workers are always touching them with cranes and stuff like that. So get used to this type of investigation. It's horrific speaking to someone about what they witnessed when everything was fine and then all of a sudden their life changes. I once did one of these and it was a plumber lifting guttering up who touched the high voltage lines. The only witnesses were 3 8-year-old boys who were sitting on their bikes watching the construction on this shed of the new guttering. They were so traumatised by it, their mothers would not let us interview them about what they saw so we could see what had happened, get their version of what had happened. In fact, they said to us that 6 months ago it happened and they're still having nightmares about it. So very, very dramatic thing to see when it actually happens. I can't understand. The one thing I can't understand is usually when it happens, the electricity comes flying out of their steel cap boots. The steel caps blow out, and that releases the electricity out. Now, in this case, it stayed in him and it basically microwaved him inside. And 5 days later, tragically, he died. Very sad thing. He was a father of 4 young children, a husband. Very awful, fatal accident. This is the type of thing we investigate as investigators. WorkSafe investigate it. The police will even investigate something like this on occasion. So get used to it. It's a fatal accident. Be prepared for it and understand it's part of our role as investigators who do workers' compensation investigation, as tragic as it has been. There's some closure this week. The scaffolding firm were fined $15,000 for some breach they had, but other than that, WorkCover are not pursuing it any further. I had an inquiry this week. A question came through, can I call myself a detective as a licensed private investigator in Australia? Good question. Let's have a look at some. This one's been operating since 2002. This one's been popular with just about every investigator in Australia and still is today. And I guess you can call yourself anything you like. I've interviewed lots of private investigators all around Australia about what they do. I've interviewed quite a few ex-detectives and they specialise in corporate criminal investigations. So when truckloads of electrical goods such as washing machines or fridges or computers or whatever are stolen by bikie gangs, and then the bikies set up retail shops to move those goods, these detectives actually do the surveillance on it, do the trap purchases on it, put together a brief of evidence, recover the goods, and do that on behalf of the corporate client. So those detectives have taken their detective designation with them since they left the police to promote their business. There's nothing wrong with that. They can do it. So in the police, you have various ranks: constable, sergeant, superintendent, that sort of thing. Detective is a designated police rank. In the police, you can't call yourself a detective if you're a constable. You can't call yourself a detective unless you've been to detective training school. So be careful with it. I can't find any act or legislation anywhere that says you can't do it. I wouldn't recommend that you go doing it, but basically, if you've got a bent that way, I guess you can. Let's have a look at some of the interesting cliches that you find in detective training school that are relevant to every investigation. One of the big complaints I often hear about investigation training courses for Certificate 3 in Investigative Services or Certificate 4 in Government Investigation as I travel around the country is, oh yes, we engaged these people years ago and their trainers came along and all they did was tell war stories about being in the police. We didn't learn anything. Well, that's not uncommon. But sometimes there's a bit of value in what they teach in some of those programs. So today I'm going to look at the top 10 cliches you'll hear in investigation training in Australia. We'll start at number 10. In investigation work, if you don't learn something new every day, you're not doing your job properly. And that is true. As an investigator, you'll actually learn 3 new things every day. It makes life really interesting in your work role. Number 9. People do admit to things that they did not do. Therefore, a confession is a good start to an investigation. Now that's standard Victoria Police Detective Training School talk. But they're right, people do admit to things they didn't do, so if someone confesses to something, you must corroborate it. Number 3 in our top 10 cliches in investigations is look at the flowers and search for the coffins. Now again, this is Victoria Police Detective Training School, and what they're saying here is someone going to lie to you, they're giving you a big bunch of beautiful flowers. That's their lie. You've got to search back between those flowers and look for the coffins hidden behind them. That's where the crime is. Number 7, you're only as good as your last investigation. Now this is one you'll hear prolifically all throughout Australia for surveillance investigators and factual investigators who brag about how good they are all the time. Trust me, that's the leveller. They're only as good as their last investigation. Number 6, some actually very wise advice. Get emotion out of it. When you go out and interview someone about their accident, incident or occurrence, make sure you stick to the facts. Keep that emotion out of it. Number 5, it's more of a formula rather than a cliche, but it goes like this: motive plus opportunity minus constraints equals crime. Use that one in all your fraud investigations. Number 4, a confession without corroboration is not worth the paper it's written on. If someone confesses to something, you've got to corroborate what they told you to ensure that they did actually do it. Number 3, the vast majority of investigations are solved as a result of painstaking investigations with perhaps a little luck. Now this is very true. You can investigate to your heart's content, this, that or whatever, and the final piece just doesn't fit into the puzzle. Then one day, just by accident, you meet the right person with that connecting piece, or you see something that matches what you're looking for, you're inspired, there it is, you've had some luck. If you have luck in investigations, you don't have to justify it, just take it. One of my personal favourites, and once again it's straight out of detective training school in Victoria, is a failure to seek is a failure to find. A failure to ask is a failure to proceed. I employ a lot of investigators, and I know a good investigator when I'm interacting with them because they are trying to find out. They're not giving me a bunch of excuses why they can't do it. They're failing to seek, they're failing to ask, and they're failing to proceed. What I want is an investigator that looks for the way in, not for the way out. So keep that one in mind. It's really good advice. Our second last one. The last one, probably the top cliche in investigation training in Australia, is the shortest note outlasts the longest memory. Now, you must apply this in your investigation work every day. Make notes of what you do. Finally, there is always one more. And it goes like this. Once again, straight out of Detective Training School in Victoria. Investigations are 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. So what that means is investigations are hard work, going out, knocking on doors, speaking to witnesses, speaking to subjects, speaking to claimants, speaking to whoever you have to talk to, the HR managers, finding the witnesses who saw it at the time and time has passed since then, and putting together what happened in a factual chronological order. It's hard work 99% of the time, and 1% of the time you'll get that little piece of inspiration that just helps you come to a conclusion on that investigation. And in my next video, I'm going to show you an example of that. I'm Mike Evans from the Australian Security. If you're seeking work as a licensed private investigator in Australia, the Australian Private Investigator Corporate and Government Investigation Jobs Facebook page is your source of current and past searchable investigation vacancies around the country. This week, in our Facebook page, you can see our first job there is a security investigator for Ignite in Canberra. They're offering between $75 and $100 per hour. One of the great jobs that's available this week is a beauty. It's a fraud and intelligence analyst at the Lottery Corporation in Brisbane. So we've had a lot of graduate students that have gone and worked for various lotteries. It's a great investigation career job. It'll only progress your career because you get exposed to a lot of fake tickets, people claiming to have bought tickets and lost them and won the lottery, that sort of thing. Really great job as an investigator for the Lottery Corporation in Brisbane. LKA down in Melbourne have a vacancy for a personal injury investigator, senior factual investigator for WorkSafe. So if you have some experience in that area and you can interview people in relation to what they saw or what happened at the statutory or pending phase and at later on the common law phase, that's a great job and a great opportunity with LKA down in Melbourne. Target are looking for a senior compliance retail officer. Now, if you have retail experience and you can combine that with your Certificate 3 in Investigative Services or Certificate 4 in Government Investigation, this is a great role for you to look after Target's compliance right around Australia. What a great opportunity with Target. Back up to Queensland, we've got a General Manager for Corporate Services Racing Integrity. It's a contradiction in terms of those two words, racing integrity. But anyway, that's a great opportunity for someone with a Diploma of Government Investigation in Queensland this week. They are just some of the jobs that are available right now. There's a Principal Compliance Officer wanted with the Department of Health down in Hobart, down in Tasmania. Great lifestyle, nice and relaxed. Great opportunity with them. Senior Investigation Officer at the Department of Justice in Hobart. Case Manager down at Precise Investigation in Melbourne. What a great opportunity with Precise to be the case manager for their workers' compensation team. They're paying up to $80,000 for that role. Senior Investigations, Performance and Conduct Safety and Integrity with the Department of Education in Brisbane. That's a wonderful role that you'll have for people that are grooming children or just generally doing misconduct in the Department of Education. who's a fraud intelligence analyst with the National Disability Insurance Scheme. You might have read in the paper this week about the infiltration of various bikie gangs and overseas gangs into the funding of the NDIS, taking money off people that so well deserve it for grubby gangs around Australia. So great opportunity in fraud intelligence with the NDIS to combat that activity. A fraud prevention manager is wanted at Chandler McCloud, and a risk, fraud and corruption officer is wanted at Randstad in Sydney. Now, you'll probably be working for the equivalent of Centrelink with that. This is a really interesting job. Coles are after a liability specialist for workers' compensation in Melbourne. So you're going to be in charge of the investigations for workers' comp for Coles workers in Melbourne. Very tragic incident this week where a young supermarket worker was filling shelves in the pet food section, and a lady's walked up to her and stabbed her. Now, the supermarket worker initially thought she'd been bumped into with a trolley, but it ended up that this person, who she'd never known, had no argument with, had not had so much as a strange look from or two, stabbed her in the leg. So that's a whole new down in retail in Australia that's come in and been done. Aware of it happening in the past. It's not a regular thing, but my word, now it's a risk management problem for every retail group in Australia. So that only came out this week about a poor unfortunate person just doing their job in retail in Perth, Western Australia. Clarity Workplace Investigations are seeking licensed investigators to do WorkSafe investigations in Melbourne, Victoria. If you're a licensed investigator, you're just beginning, they will onboard you. They will show you what to do. They will give you the confidence to earn an income and grow a career with Clarity out at Kew. Great team of people at Clarity. Get in touch with them and you'll be up and running very soon as a licensed private investigator. If I went too fast for you and you missed any of that, jump on the Australian Security Academy's YouTube channel. Just type in Michael Evans, PI, Australian Security Academy. And anything you want to see, job vacancy, a cliche, or how a man can be killed by his own tape measure, you can watch the replay on Saturday morning or even Saturday afternoon or Sunday. Over 14,000 people watch this program each week across LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter channels. So we hope you enjoyed today's program. Don't forget, if you want to see the replay, go here to the Australian Security Academy's YouTube channel and see that special job vacancy that's got your name written all over it. I'm going out in our usual way that we do every Friday. That's with our Koreans.
작전 종료. 전원 복귀할 것.
Yes, my mission is complete for episode 162 of Spy Curious. That movie you just saw the end of where they said mission complete is called Cold Eyes. If ever you've got a spare 2 hours on a Saturday afternoon, watch it. There's about 5 really good universal licensed private investigator tips in that movie and sort of really great fun. There's some boring bits too, but it's about private investigators. That's what we enjoy. And there's nothing boring about being a licensed private investigator. I'll see you next Secret Week.